The ship was burning. Fire poured from the holes in the walls, and the air smelled like melting metal and death. Sergeant moved through the smoke like a shadow, his heavy armor making deep sounds with each step. The red lights on his helmet showed him everything: the bodies on the floor, the broken machines, the path forward. 11 years. The war between humans and the had lasted 11 years. Had been fighting since the first day, when alien ships appeared above Earth's colonies and began burning cities to ash. He remembered watching the news feeds, seeing millions die in minutes. He remembered the screams. Now finally they had reached the enemy's heart. The flagship called Eternal Throne floated in space like a wounded beast. Human soldiers had broken through its shields and cut into its hull. Somewhere inside this ship, the Queen waited. The one who had started everything. The one who had ordered the death of billions. Squad had started with 12 soldiers. Now only he remained. The last one, Private, had died 3 corridors back. A guard had put a plasma bolt through his chest before could react. Was 22 years old. He had joined the military because his entire family died at New Seoul, just like's family. The sergeant stepped over another body, this one. The aliens looked almost beautiful in death, their pale blue skin glowing softly, their 4 arms spread wide. They had delicate features, large dark eyes and bodies that seemed too thin to be real. Looking at them, you would never guess they were the most powerful empire in the known galaxy. But power meant nothing against humans who had nothing left to lose. His radio crackled. "Ghost, this is Command. What's your status?" Ghost, that was his name among the soldiers, the Iron Ghost. His armor was painted black and covered with scars from 100 battles. They had learned to fear that armor. They whispered about it in their ships, told stories about the human demon who walked through fire and could not be killed. "Squad is gone," replied, his voice flat and tired. "I'm continuing to the throne room." There was silence on the radio. Then, "Understood, Ghost. Reinforcements are 40 minutes out. Can you wait?" Looked at the door ahead of him. Behind that door was another corridor, and then another, and then the throne room where Queen sat on her crystal seat, waiting. "No," he said. "She might escape. I'm going in." The voice on the radio was worried now. "You can't take the Queen's guard alone. Nobody can." Smiled inside his helmet. It was not a happy smile. "Watch me." He cut the radio and moved forward. The Queen's personal guards were the best soldiers in the Empire. They wore silver armor that shone like mirrors, and they carried weapons that could cut through steel like paper. Each one had trained for 100 years. Each one had killed more enemies than could count. He found 6 of them in the next corridor. The fight lasted less than 2 minutes. Moved like water and struck like thunder. His armor was old human technology, not as elegant as designs, but built to take punishment and keep going. When a guard hit him with a plasma sword, the armor screamed but held. When another fired a rifle at his head, the helmet absorbed the blow and cracked but did not break. He killed the first guard with his combat knife, pushing it through a gap in the silver armor. The second died from a plasma bolt to the face. The third and fourth he killed with his bare hands, using his armor's strength to crush their delicate bodies. The 5th guard almost got him. Her blade cut through his shoulder armor and drew blood, real human blood, red and warm. Felt the pain explode through his body, but he did not stop. He grabbed her arm, broke it, and then broke her neck. The 6th guard tried to run, shot him in the back. He stood in the corridor surrounded by bodies, breathing hard. Blood dripped from his shoulder and left red marks on the floor. His armor was damaged in a dozen places. Warning lights flashed across his vision, telling him that his suit was failing. It did not matter. Nothing mattered except the door at the end of the corridor. The throne room. Walked forward. Each step sent pain shooting through his wounded shoulder, but he ignored it. He had felt worse. He had survived worse. And he would not stop, could not stop, until he looked into the eyes of the Queen who had taken everything from him. His wife. She had been a teacher, gentle and kind, with a laugh that could light up any room. She died when the bombs fell on New Seoul. Bora, his daughter, 7 years old, with her mother's eyes and her father's stubbornness. She died in her mother's arms, never understanding why the sky was falling. 40 million people died that day. His whole world ended in fire and screaming. He reached the throne room door. It was massive, made of some kind of crystal that glowed with inner light. Beautiful. Everything the made was beautiful. Raised his armored fist and struck the door. Once, twice, 3 times. The crystal cracked and shattered, falling around him like frozen tears. He stepped through the broken door and into the throne room. And there she was. Queen sat on her throne, alone, waiting for him. She was smaller than he expected, barely reaching his chest, even if they stood side by side. Her skin glowed soft purple in the light, and her 4 arms rested quietly on the arms of her chair. She wore no armor. She carried no weapon. She looked at him with ancient eyes that held no fear. "So," she said, her voice soft and musical, "the Iron Ghost has come at last." Raised his rifle and aimed it at her heart. "Yes," he said, "I have." The throne room was silent except for the distant sounds of battle. Somewhere far away, human soldiers were still fighting, still dying, still pushing deeper into the ship. But here, in this crystal chamber filled with soft purple light, time seemed to stop. Kept his rifle aimed at the queen. His wounded shoulder screamed with pain, and he could feel blood running down his arm inside the armor. The suit's medical systems were trying to stop the bleeding, but they were damaged too. He did not have much time. "You ordered the attack on New Seoul," he said. His voice came through his helmet speakers, cold and mechanical. 40 million people, women, children, families, you burned them all. Queen did not move. She sat perfectly still on her crystal throne, watching him with those large, dark eyes. Up close, could see that she looked tired, ancient and tired, like a mountain that had stood for too long against the wind. "Yes," she said simply, "I gave that order." His finger tightened on the trigger. "Why?" "Would my answer change anything?" asked. "Would it bring back your dead? Would it undo 11 years of war?" "No," admitted. "But I want to know. Before I kill you, I want to understand why." Was quiet for a long moment. Then slowly, she rose from her throne. She was even smaller standing up, her thin body wrapped in robes that shimmered like starlight. She moved toward him with careful steps, as if approaching a wounded animal. "Stay back," warned, raising his rifle higher. Stopped. She was only 10 feet away now, close enough that he could see the fine lines on her face, marks of age that seemed impossible on an immortal being, close enough to see the sadness in her eyes. "I have ruled the empire for 3,000 years, she said. "I have watched stars born and die. I have seen civilizations rise and fall. In all that time, I have never met a species like yours." "Is that supposed to make me feel special?" asked bitterly. "It should make you afraid," replied. "Because in 3,000 years I have never been afraid of anything, until I met humans." She gestured with one of her 4 arms, and the walls of the throne room came alive with light. Images appeared, holographic pictures floating in the air around them. Saw human soldiers fighting, dying, winning impossible battles. He saw human ships ramming into cruisers. He saw human colonies burning, and then human hands building new ones from the ashes. "When we first came to your worlds," continued, "we expected you to surrender. Every other species did. The lasted 3 months before they knelt. The Mora lasted too. We thought humans would be the same. Soft creatures living on a single planet, barely able to reach their own moon. We thought you would break easily." She laughed softly, but there was no humor in the sound. "We were wrong." Watched the images swirl around him. He saw himself in some of them, a dark figure in black armor, cutting through enemy lines, surviving wounds that should have killed him a dozen times. The Iron Ghost, a legend built on blood and pain. Your first colony fell in a day, said. But you did not surrender. We destroyed your second colony and your third and your fourth. You still did not surrender. We burned New Sol and killed 40 million of your people in a single attack. We thought surely this would break you. Her voice dropped to a whisper, but you only fought harder. Felt something twist in his chest. He remembered the days after New Sol. He remembered the grief that had nearly destroyed him, the rage that had burned through his veins like fire. He remembered the moment he put on his armor and swore he would never stop fighting until they were destroyed. What did you expect? He asked. You killed our families, our children. Did you think we would just give up? Yes, admitted, every other species did. When we took their loved ones, they lost the will to fight. They became empty, broken, but humans. She shook her head slowly. Humans become more dangerous. You take your grief and turn it into weapons. You take your pain and make it into strength. It is terrifying. She looked directly at him and felt the weight of her ancient gaze like a physical force. Do you know what my generals call you? She asked. Not the Iron Ghost. That is just one name. They call your entire species the wound that will not close. Because no matter how many of you we kill, no matter how much we take from you, you keep bleeding and fighting and refusing to die. Said nothing. He did not know what to say. I have lived for 3,000 years, repeated. I have never known fear, but I fear humans. I fear what you are. I fear what you could become. Good, said. You should be afraid. Smiled, a small and tired expression that made her look almost human. Yes, I should be, but fear is not why I started this war, soldier. Fear came later. The war started because of something else, something my people need desperately. What could be worth billions of lives? Closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them again, they were wet with tears that glowed faintly in the purple light. Survival, she said. My people are dying. The empire, which has lasted for 10,000 years, will be extinct within 2 centuries, and the only thing that can save us is you, your species, your blood, your genes. She spread her 4 arms wide, as if showing him the whole universe. We did not come to conquer you, human. We came because you are the only thing in the entire galaxy that can keep my children alive. Stared at her. His rifle was still raised, still aimed at her heart, but his hands were shaking now, and he was not sure if it was from blood loss or from something else entirely. You're lying, he said. No, whispered. I am telling you the truth. For the first time in this war, I am telling you the truth. His mind was spinning. The wound in his shoulder burned like fire, and the Queen's words echoed in his head like thunder. Dying. They were dying. It seemed impossible. They were the most powerful empire in the galaxy, rulers of 1,000 star systems, masters of technology that made human science look like children's toys. How could they be dying? Show me, he demanded. Prove it. Nodded slowly. She waved her hand and the images on the walls changed. The pictures of war disappeared, replaced by something else. Medical charts, scientific data, numbers and graphs that did not fully understand, but that painted a clear picture. Our species is ancient, explained, her voice heavy with sadness. We achieved immortality 5,000 years ago. We stopped aging. We stopped dying from disease. We thought we had won the greatest victory in history. She pointed to one of the floating images, a picture of children, small and delicate, playing in a garden of crystal flowers. But we did not understand the cost. When you stop dying, you also stop changing, growing, adapting. Our genetic code became frozen, perfect, we thought, eternal, but perfection is death. The image changed to show a newborn, tiny and beautiful, but something was wrong with it. Its skin was too pale, its eyes too dull, its limbs too weak. Each new generation is weaker than the last, continued. Our children are born sick. They die young for us anyway, a few hundred years instead of forever, and each generation the sickness grows worse. Our scientists have studied the problem for centuries. They all reached the same conclusion. The image changed again, showing a graph that sloped downward like a falling cliff. In 200 years, no more children will survive birth. Our species will be extinct within 3 centuries. Stared at the data. His targeting systems were analyzing the information, checking it against human scientific knowledge. Everything matched. The Queen was telling the truth. "And humans can fix this?" he asked. "Yes." Eyes lit up with something like hope. "Human DNA is remarkable. Your species is young, only a few 100,000 years old, but your genetic code is incredibly flexible. You adapt, change, evolve. You carry the potential for millions of different futures inside your cells." She walked toward another image, a comparison of human and genetics. "Our scientists discovered something amazing. Human DNA is compatible with ours, not perfectly, but enough. If we could combine our genetic codes, we could heal the damage. Our children would be born healthy again. They would live." Felt cold inside his armor. "You wanted to breed with us?" "No," said quickly. "Not like that. We needed genetic samples, blood, tissue. We planned to use advanced technology to extract what we needed and modify our own children. It would have been painless. Humans would not even have noticed." "Then why the war?" demanded. "Why not just ask?" Lowered her eyes. For the first time she looked ashamed. "Because we did not think you mattered," she admitted. "Humans were so young, so primitive. You had barely reached your own moon when we found you. In the eyes of the Empire, you were not people. You were resources, animals. We did not think we needed to ask permission from animals." Anger flared in his chest. "So you just started taking what you wanted?" "Yes. We began collecting humans from isolated colonies. Small numbers at first. We were careful, or so we thought. But humans noticed. You always notice. And when you found out what we were doing, you did not try to negotiate. You attacked." The images on the walls changed to show the first battles of the war. Human ships, tiny compared to vessels, throwing themselves at the enemy with desperate fury. Many of them died, but some of them won. "We responded with force," continued. "We thought a show of strength would make you submit, so we destroyed one of your major colonies, and when that did not work, we destroyed another, and another." Her voice cracked slightly. "And then New Soul, we thought, we were certain, that 40 million dead would break your spirit forever, that you would finally understand that you could not win, that resistance was pointless, that you should simply accept your place as our subjects." His hands were shaking badly now. The rifle felt impossibly heavy. "But you did not break," whispered. "You rose. Every human who could hold a weapon joined the fight. Your factories worked day and night building ships and guns. Your scientists created new weapons, new armor, new ways to kill us. You turned your entire civilization into a machine of war." She looked at him with something like wonder in her ancient eyes. "In 3,000 years I have conquered 400 species. They all fell the same way. They fought until they understood they could not win, and then they surrendered. But humans," she spread her forearms wide, "humans do not surrender. Even when you cannot win, you keep fighting. Even when your families are dead, you keep fighting. Even when there is no hope left, you keep fighting." "We fight because we have to," said. His voice was rough with emotion. "We fight because giving up means losing everything we are." "I know that now," replied. "But I did not know it then. I did not understand your species. I treated you like animals, and I learned too late that you are something far more dangerous than any animal. You are survivors. You are warriors. You are human." She fell silent. The images faded from the walls, leaving them alone in the soft purple light. His rifle was still pointed at her heart. His targeting system showed a clear shot. One pull of the trigger, and the creature who had ordered the death of his wife and daughter would be dead. But something had changed. "If I kill you," he said slowly, "what happens to your people?" Met his gaze. "The war continues. Another leader takes my place, probably one of my generals, someone who hates humans even more than I do. The fighting goes on until one species destroys the other. Either we go extinct in battle, or we go extinct from the genetic sickness. Either way, my children die. And if you live? Hesitated. There might be another way, a way to save both our peoples, but it would require something I never thought possible. What? She took a deep breath. It was strange, watching an immortal being gather her courage. Peace, she said. It would require peace, cooperation, trust between species that have spent 11 years trying to kill each other. Laughed, it was a harsh, bitter sound. You think that's possible after everything you've done? No, admitted. I do not think it is possible at all. That is why I have been sitting here waiting for you, waiting for the Iron Ghost to come and end my life. She straightened her thin shoulders and looked at him with clear, steady eyes. So do it, human. Pull the trigger, take your revenge. I will not stop you. The silence in the throne room was so thick that could hear his own heartbeat. It echoed inside his helmet, steady and strong, the sound of a man who had survived 1,000 battles, the sound of a man who had kept going when everyone around him fell. His finger rested on the trigger. The targeting system showed a perfect shot. One movement, one tiny squeeze, and Queen would be dead. The monster who had ordered the burning of New Soul, the death of 40 million innocent people, the murder of his wife and his daughter Bora, she stood before him, waiting, accepting her fate. So why could he not pull the trigger? Thought about, she had been a teacher at a small school in the hills above New Soul. She taught young children to read and write, and she always came home with stories about their funny questions and their endless energy. She had the most beautiful smile, the kind that made feel like everything would be okay, no matter how bad things seemed. He thought about Bora, 7 years old with her mother's smile and her father's stubbornness. She had wanted to be an astronaut when she grew up. She collected pictures of stars and planets and stuck them all over her bedroom walls. The night before the attack, she had asked to tell her stories about space, about the aliens that lived among the stars. He had told her that most aliens were probably friendly, that they were probably just like humans, with families and dreams and hopes for the future. He had been wrong. But looking at Queen now, standing alone in her empty throne room, waiting for death with ancient eyes full of sadness, wondered if maybe he had been right after all. Maybe they were not so different from humans. Maybe they were just as desperate, just as afraid, just as broken. Maybe they had done terrible things for the same reason humans had done terrible things throughout history, because they were scared, because they wanted to survive, because they did not know any other way. It did not make it right. Nothing could ever make it right, but maybe it made it understandable. Lowered his rifle. Blinked in surprise. For the first time since he had entered the throne room, she looked uncertain. "What are you doing?" she asked. "I don't know," admitted, and he meant it. He truly did not know what he was doing or why. Slowly, painfully, he reached up with his free hand and touched his helmet. His fingers found the release catches, the small locks that held the helmet to his armor. For 11 years he had worn this helmet in battle. For 11 years it had been his face, the face of the Iron Ghost, the demon that soldiers whispered about in fear. Now, for reasons he could not explain, he wanted to take it off. "What are you doing?" asked again, her voice more urgent now. Did not answer. He clicked the first catch open, then the second, then the third. Air hissed as the seals broke, and he felt the cold atmosphere of the throne room touch his neck for the first time. He lifted the helmet off his head and let it fall to the floor. The sound it made when it hit the crystal was loud in the silence. Took a deep breath of alien air and looked at Queen with his real eyes, human eyes, brown and tired and full of pain. He was not what she expected. He could see that in her face. The Iron Ghost was supposed to be a monster, a machine of death, something more than human. But the man who stood before her was just a man. His hair was black with streaks of gray. His face was lined and marked by years of war and grief. His eyes were the eyes of someone who had seen too much death and carried too much pain. He looked old, not old like who had lived for thousands of years, but old in a different way. Old like someone who had been broken and put back together too many times. And yet he was still standing, still breathing, still alive. Queen stared at him. Her large, dark eyes moved across his face, taking in every scar, every line, every mark of suffering. She looked at the wound on his shoulder where blood was seeping through the damaged armor. She looked at his hands, rough and calloused from years of holding weapons. Then she did something that surprised them both. She began to weep. The tears ran down her luminescent cheeks like liquid starlight. Her thin body shook with sobs that seemed too large for her small frame. She pressed two of her hands against her mouth as if trying to hold the grief inside, but it spilled out anyway, centuries of pain and fear and loneliness pouring out in a flood of tears. "How," she whispered through her sobs, "how do you do it?" "Did not understand. Do what?" "Keep going." His voice broke on the words. "You are so fragile, so temporary. You live for such a short time, barely 100 years, a single heartbeat in the life of the universe. And yet you keep fighting. You lose everything, everyone you love, and you keep standing. How?" She looked at him with eyes full of desperate confusion. "I have lived for 3,000 years, she said. "I have watched my friends die. I have watched my children die. I have watched entire civilizations rise and fall, and I have kept going because I had no choice. Because I am immortal and I cannot stop even when I want to." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "But you can stop. You can give up. You can let go, and yet you don't. Even when you have nothing left to fight for, you keep fighting. Even when your heart is broken and your body is failing and death would be a mercy, you keep standing." She fell to her knees before him, this ancient queen of a dying empire, and looked up at him with something like worship in her eyes. "What are you?" she asked. "What kind of creature refuses to break even when breaking is the only logical choice?" Looked down at her. He thought about her question. He thought about all the times he had wanted to give up, all the nights he had spent wishing he had died with his family, all the moments when the pain had been so great that he could barely breathe. And he thought about why he had kept going anyway. "We're human," he said simply. "We don't know how to quit. Even when we want to, even when we should, we don't know how. It's not strength, it's not courage, it's just who we are." He reached down and offered her his hand. "Your people are dying," he said. "Mine are dying too because of this war. Maybe there's another way. Maybe there's a chance for both of us to survive." Looked at his hand like it was the most precious thing in the universe. "You would show mercy," she whispered, "after everything I've done to you." "No," said, "not mercy. That's for people who have given up. This is something else." He helped her to her feet, and for a moment they stood face to face. The Iron Ghost and the Queen, two broken leaders who had lost more than they could ever describe. "What do you call it?" asked. Thought for a moment. "Hope," he said finally. "I call it hope." The reinforcements arrived 20 minutes later. 12 human soldiers in full combat armor burst through the doors of the throne room, their weapons raised, ready to fight and die for their sergeant. They stopped when they saw what waited for them inside. The Iron Ghost stood without his helmet, his face bare for the first time in years. Blood covered his shoulder and ran down his arm, dripping onto the crystal floor. Beside him stood Queen, the ruler of the Empire, the most hated being in human history. They were not fighting, they were talking. "Sir," the squad leader, a young woman named, stepped forward carefully. Her rifle was aimed at the Queen, but her eyes were on. What's happening here?" "Stand down," ordered. His voice was tired but firm. "Lower your weapons, all of you." "Sir, that's the Queen," she ordered. "I know what she ordered." His eyes never left his face. "I know what she's done, but the war is over, or it can be if we let it." The soldiers looked at each other. This was not what they had expected. They had come to fight, to kill, to finish the enemy once and for all. They had not come for peace. But they were soldiers and was their commander. One by one, they lowered their weapons. "Thank you," said softly. She looked at the human soldiers with new eyes, not as enemies, not as resources, but as people. "I know I do not deserve your mercy. I know I can never undo what I have done, but I want to try." She turned to face fully. "There is a way to save my people without hurting yours. My scientists have been working on it in secret, hoping that someday the war would end and we could share it with you." "What kind of way?" asked. Her voice was suspicious but curious. "Synthetic genetics," explained. "We can create the genetic material we need in laboratories using small samples given freely. No harvesting, no taking by force, just cooperation, partnership between our species." "Why didn't you do that from the beginning?" another soldier demanded. His face twisted with shame. "Because it was slower, more difficult. It would have taken decades instead of years, and I was impatient. I was afraid. I thought my people could not wait that long." She looked at the floor. "I was wrong. If I had chosen that path from the start, millions of lives would have been saved. On both sides. I made a mistake that cost the universe more than I can ever repay." The room was silent. Outside, the battle had finally stopped. Human ships surrounded the flagship, their weapons silent. For the first time in 11 years, no one was shooting. Took a deep breath. His wound was getting worse, and he knew he needed medical attention soon. But there was something more important to do first. "I can't speak for humanity," he said slowly. "I'm just a soldier. The politicians and the generals will have to decide whether peace is possible, but I can tell you what I think." He looked at his soldiers, at the young men and women who had followed him through hell, who had lost friends and family just like he had. "I think we're tired," he said. "Tired of fighting, tired of dying, tired of burying people we love. I think most humans want this war to end, not because we're afraid, but because we're ready to live again." He turned back to, "I killed a lot of your people today. I've killed thousands over the years. I can't take that back, just like you can't take back what you did to us. But maybe we can stop adding to the pile of bodies. Maybe we can start building something instead of destroying." His eyes filled with tears again, but this time they were different. Not tears of grief or shame, but something softer, something like gratitude. "You are remarkable," she whispered. "Your whole species is remarkable. I spent 3,000 years thinking I understood the universe. I thought I knew what strength was. I thought I knew what courage was." She reached out and touched his face with one of her delicate hands. Her skin was cool against his, smooth and slightly luminescent. "I was wrong about everything," she said. "True strength is not living forever. True strength is living knowing you will die and choosing to love anyway, choosing to hope anyway, choosing to build and dream and care about others, even though you know it will all end someday." She smiled, and for the first time she looked almost young. "Humans are not primitive. You are the most advanced species I have ever met, because you understand something that immortals forget. Life is precious because it is short. Love is precious because it can be lost. Every moment matters because there are only so many moments." Felt something crack inside his chest. Not pain, something else. Something he had not felt since the day his family died. He felt alive. "We'll need to talk to our leaders," he said, his voice rougher than he intended. "Set up meetings, negotiations. It won't be easy. A lot of people on both sides want revenge, not peace." "I understand," nodded. "It will take time, maybe years, maybe decades, but I am willing to try for as long as it takes." She paused, and her expression grew serious. "There is one thing I want you to know. You asked me earlier why I was waiting here alone, without weapons or guards. You asked why I was ready to let you kill me. I remember. It was not just because I felt guilty," said. "It was because I wanted to see. I wanted to look into the eyes of the Iron Ghost and understand what made humans so different from every other species. I wanted to know your secret." She smiled again, and this time there was real warmth in it. "Now I understand. Your secret is that you have no secret. You are simply yourselves, fragile, temporary, beautiful creatures who refuse to let the darkness win. You fight not because you are strong, but because you love. And love, I have learned, is stronger than any weapon." Said nothing, there was nothing to say. 3 months later, the Treaty of the Eternal Throne was signed. It was the first peace agreement between humans and it marked the beginning of a new chapter in the history of both species. The war that had consumed a generation finally ended, not with a final battle, but with two broken leaders who found the courage to choose a different path. Never fully recovered from his wounds, he walked with a limp for the rest of his life, and his shoulder never stopped aching on cold days. He retired from the military and spent his remaining years working with scientists, helping to develop the synthetic genetics program that would save their species. He never had more children. Some wounds are too deep to heal completely. But sometimes, late at night, he would look up at the stars and think about Bora. He would remember their smiles, their laughter, the way they made him feel like the luckiest man in the universe. And he would hope, truly hope, that somewhere, somehow, they were proud of him, not for the battles he had won or the enemies he had killed, but for the moment when he chose peace over revenge, when he chose hope over hatred, when he chose to be human in the truest sense of the word. The Iron Ghost was just a legend, but the man, the husband, the father was real. And in the end, that was enough.